Good morning, everybody. It's really good to see you all. It's been a while. A couple weeks ago, we had that canceled church, and then last week I was in Estes Park. Um, so I really was fortunate to have the opportunity to spend time with the GPA workshop in Estes Park uh, last week, and I really enjoyed it a lot. And throughout the week and for the next couple of weeks, we have the captain training group here. And I had since we're neighbors, I can come over and listen anytime I want to. And it's been a really refreshing experience for me because I can come and I listen. And earlier in the week, they had gone out and done what they call pioneering. So they went out for 2-3 days, and they had to make money to buy their food, to buy their hotel room, and basically determine their schedule, how they were going to conduct themselves without anybody else watching or without anyone else telling them they have to do things a certain way. And it's a great experience because it really kind of brings out your character in a way. Like, you get to see more of like how you act without anybody watching you. Of course, they're in pairs, but still. And there was one point where a couple people were sharing, and they were talking about how, just they weren't sure what to do. One person was sick, another person wasn't sure if they should, encourage the person to push forward despite not feeling so well, or if they should stop early and, rest and get better because health is important. And it was nice to hear because it really kind of reminded me of many of my own experiences in the past working with young people also, and how sometimes it's not always easy to know what the right thing to do is. Sometimes we working with young people, I encourage them to do things that they didn't feel ready for, or they felt maybe were beyond their ability or their capability, with the hope that through that experience they could gain greater confidence, like see what they're capable of doing, and have a new experience, and teach life lessons for the future. They could be more successful. And also, I go through the same thing with my own children on a regular basis. I mean, my children are really into Pokemon now, the boys. Which is fun for me because when I was a lot older than them, I also really liked Pokemon. So we watch it together, like 1 or 2 episodes sometimes, and they really enjoy it a lot. And but they always want to watch more, and there's so many fun things that they could do. They're asking me about Minecraft now, because they see their friends playing Minecraft and they want to play too. And it's sometimes hard to know where the line is in terms of, as a parent, I want my children to grow up to be successful, to be able to take on this world and to be successful in whatever that they decide to do in their lives and in raising their families and whatnot. But I also want them to be able to enjoy childhood, a little bit. And so, but really, like, in some ways, sometimes I feel like it would be so much easier for me if I could just let my children watch Pokemon all day long, and eat candy, and what was the other thing? There's one other thing I wrote down here. Play games all day long. And, if I did that, my children would honestly think I was the best dad in the world, right? So my dad is so cool. He lets me do whatever I want. But I wouldn't feel good about that. And but also you have to ask yourself, well, from a parent perspective, obviously that's not a good idea. But but what is, why is that not a good idea? Because some people would say that let your children do whatever they want. Let them do whatever makes them feel happy, and then and that's fine. That's kind of what life is about: being happy, doing what makes you happy. When I went to Las Vegas a few weeks ago for our National Leaders Conference, I was surprised. One of the major issues that they brought up was the issue of pornography, and I wasn't expecting that. But there was a big conference with hundreds of people that went to it, and we had a large representative group come from our movement. Actually, out of all the different groups that were there, ours was the biggest. And I was just really surprised because, like obviously I know that it's an issue, but really what they were conveying at the conference was how big of an issue it was actually and how much it affects people. And even more recently, many people have been saying, oh, it's fine, it's good for you, if you like it, if it makes you happy. But recently, many intellectuals and scientists are coming forward and saying, actually, it's not good. Actually, it's destroying people's lives, it's destroying people's marriages, and destroying people's futures. Even Time magazine recently, front page of their one of their most recent magazines was talking about how this many people are calling it a health epidemic, how it's affecting people's ability to have a normal relationship. And it's kind of one of those things, if it it's easy to say, well, if it's not hurting anybody and it makes me feel good, then what's wrong with it? But, we know that life isn't just about doing what makes me feel good. And life isn't just about doing what makes me feel happy. I want to show a short video about happiness. So just take a couple minutes. Please enjoy.
Well, hello and welcome to today's program. I'm Mark Gungor, and this is Love, Marriage, and Stinking Thinking, the program that takes on the common myths concerning life, love, and marriage. Now, this show examines why men and women think the way they do and how it's different from each other. Why is that important? We're very quick to make into heart problems what are essentially head problems. In other words, a man thinks and acts in a certain way. A woman doesn't understand it. She assumes he has a bad heart. It's not his heart, it's his head. Okay? And the same with women. We get ourselves in all kinds of trouble. And we're going to be looking at that because a lot of the problems that we struggle with in relationships today is based on the way we think. We've got very bad perceptions and concepts that we build as a foundation for relationships. Sadly, a lot of these foundations are just bogus and they don't work. Well, today, let's take a look at our stinking thinking for the day. And it is this: God wants me to be happy. Well, to get a sense of how people think about the subject, we sent out our 33-year-old intern, Ross, to talk to people back in my hometown of Green Bay, Wisconsin. Let's take a look at some of the responses that he caught.
How important is happiness in a relationship?
That's a great question. No, I think you gotta maintain that. It's important. That's what life's about, and if you can't do it with that person, then either you find out what's going to make them happy or make you happy and do it, or you move on, I guess. I don't know.
If you're not happy, then why be with the other person?
What role does happiness play in the marriage?
Well, it plays a very big role. You have to be happy, or I think people stray. I've got lots of friends that cheat on their husbands.
Really, it means everything.
How important is happiness in a relationship?
It's very important in your life, and with a relationship, it's very important.
What else is there?
In a relationship, what role does happiness play?
I think that's the key role. I mean, the most important. Happiness is the way to go. Money doesn't have to be it. Whatever makes you happy should be the reason, should be the number one reason in a relationship.
It pretty much makes the relationship, I think. You can't have a good relationship if you're not happy.
Now, it's not that I'm against being happy. I believe God wants people to be happy, but not to the point that it overcomes the right thing to do. Sadly, we're living in a culture today that people literally determine what they're going to do based on whether or not it makes them happy. And I'm talking about Christian people. I understand people without God in their lives thinking in these terms, even that's ridiculous. But Christian people who literally think that what they're going to do, my standard for life, what I decide to do, whether or not I keep my commitments and do whatever I'm supposed to do, is based on whether or not God wants me to be happy. And as I travel around the country, I am stunned at the number of people that I talk to who are ready to walk out on their families, walk away from their kids, walk away from their husband and their wife, and their pure justification is, well, because God wants me to be happy, you know, as if this was God's standard for making his rules. I mean, this is ridiculous. I don't think God was sitting up in heaven saying, thou shalt not commit adultery, unless it makes you happy. You know, I'm open to that, you know. I mean, this is totally ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And I think, who told people this? Who told you God wants you to be happy to such a high degree? Oftentimes, God asks us to do things that make us profoundly unhappy. When Peter was being crucified upside down, that was a bad day for him. But all today is all about being happy. I got to be happy. You got to be happy. If I'm not happy, then nothing else counts and nothing else matters. And it has gotten to a point where it's absolutely insane. And we're going to be talking about that on today's program.
So I was inspired about this video because a few months back, Alice was doing one of her marriage enrichment programs, and she actually showed the full version of this video, not just like the introduction that I showed here. And I wish I had had that, but maybe one day she'll present that again. I would really like to see it. But, you know, it was really interesting as I watched this video. It really kind of made me think about a lot of things because, you know, the world, the culture that we live in now is, you know, it doesn't really, a lot of people don't really think so much about what is right and what's wrong anymore. Everything is kind of relative. There isn't a right or a wrong. It's whatever makes you happy. And I thought this was a really interesting perspective because he's saying, you know, yeah, it's good to be happy, but at what expense? And, you know, and of course, is there more to happiness? Because, I don't know, for me, it's interesting when you think about happiness, a lot of times what we think about is kind of that emotion, right? That feeling, like, I feel so good. Like, things are just so great and, you know, this is a great moment in my life. But you know what? Doesn't that just eventually disappear at some point? I mean, when James Powell came, I was feeling so inspired about, oh yeah, I'm gonna pray more and I'm gonna take, you know, conditions more seriously and et cetera and et cetera, et cetera. And then eventually, as is always what happens, inspiration wears off, right? Inspiration always wears off at some point. And then you're kind of left with what you had before you had the inspiration, which was kind of like, I don't know, in some cases nothing, and then but hopefully in other cases like purpose or an intention. And I've been thinking about this a lot this week because this week has been particularly emotional for some reason, lots of ups and downs, and there was times where I was thinking, you know, pastoring, I was happy doing it before, but I don't feel so happy right now. And let's see, what else? And just, you know, just looking back on my life too, looking back on my, you know, my relationship with Adonia these past 11, 12 years, there's been wonderful, happy moments. And there's also been times where we weren't really sure if we were, especially the first few years of our relationship, we weren't really sure if there was going to be any real happiness come out of our relationship at all. And there was a lot of doubts there, like, you know, how happy are we going to be together? Like, because this doesn't seem to be working so well. And then, of course, with my children, there's been times where I haven't felt so inspired about loving my children. And so there's been times where I felt like, yeah, I wish I could go back to those days before I had children. You know, I would be happier. Or at least that's kind of the feeling, you know, that I get sometimes. But like I said, the happiness that I'm talking about here, you know, these moments that they come and they go, it really is that. They come and they go. You know, we're happy for a while, and then we're unhappy. It changes from day to day. And it usually changes based on what's going on in my life, how people treat me, how my children treat me, how my spouse treats me, what they do or don't do for me. Maybe someone cut me off in a highway, or some unexpected bill showed up in the mail, or something. Could be anything. But if we base our happiness just on simply what happens to us in our lives, or we base our actions, our direction in life just based on things that happen to us, then we can get caught up in living a whole life like that and never really finding any true happiness at all. And I want to share a quote from with you, from the Divine Principle. This is from the introduction. People feel joy when their desires are fulfilled. The word desire, however, is often not understood in its original sense, because in the present circumstances, our desires tend to pursue evil rather than good. And I was thinking a lot about that because, once my inspiration wore off, I really didn't feel like getting up and praying. It was kind of like that. There was the two desires, the desire to do what I really wanted to do, and then the desire to not do it at the same time. I bet you guys can relate. Desires which result in injustice do not emanate from a person's original mind. The original mind is well aware that such desires lead to misfortune. Therefore, it repels evil desires and strives to follow the good. Even at the cost of their lives, people seek for the joy that can enrapture the original mind. This is the human condition. We grope along exhausting path to cast off the shadow of death and search for the light of life. Has anyone realized the joy in which the original mind delights by pursuing evil desires? Whenever such desires are sated, we feel unrest in our conscience and agony in our heart. Would a parent ever instruct his child to be evil? Would a teacher deliberately instill unrighteousness in his students? The impulse of the original mind, which everyone possesses, is to abhor evil and exalt goodness. And then I have one more quote. If you are occupied by your body, you are in the satanic world. If you are occupied by your mind, you are in heaven. Your conscience is the front line where God comes to visit you. So, in reflecting on this and in my life, I was thinking that even though we are all seeking for this thing called happiness, I don't think that we're really just looking for the emotion, just the feeling of being happy in the moment, or that emotion that disappears, or maybe that whatever that is that feels good, even though maybe inside our conscience, our original mind is screaming at us. Of course, having those moments of happiness and emotion is wonderful, right? Like, we don't want to live a life without that. But we also have to remember that, at least what I interpret from what I'm reading, from my understanding from True Parents, is that the joy that each and every one of us is looking for, the happiness and the fulfillment that each and every one of us is looking for, is the joy that comes from living a life that has meaning and purpose, and that we can all feel proud of in front of God and in front of the people that we love and care for. And I think that this is something that we need to never lose hold of, that we always have to hold on to this, the purpose for which we live our life, for which we go through the difficulties, for which we go through the different emotions and challenges of life. Because we don't want to just have our lives determined by what other people do to us or what other people don't do to us, or that the daily actions that happen in our everyday life. but we want to have a purpose and a direction for which we're going, and we feel good about, that we feel inside in our conscience, in our original mind, that makes us happy. Even if in the moment, things don't look so inspiring. Because life is like that, right? We can't expect that life is just going to be great all the time, that life is just going to be happy all the time. You know, raising my children, I really like that movie Inside Out. Is that what it's called? Yeah. I don't know if you've all seen it, but I showed a clip of it a little while back. But I really like that movie because it really emphasized that there are so many different aspects of life. And if we just try to live a happy life, a joyful life all the time, then we're missing out. That there's an important other aspect of it. Anyway, really like that movie. But anyway, our emotions come and go. And we have to really think about, you know, when we don't have a strong purpose, we don't have a strong direction that we're going, then our emotions are almost like they're everything. It can be really easy to live our life based on how we feel. But that might not always get us to where we want to be in life. That might not always help us to realize whatever that goal is. And definitely for, you know, thinking back on my relationship with Donia over the years, if I had given up, or if I had just decided at one point, you know, I'm really not happy in this relationship, and I want to go find something else that's going to make me happier, then we wouldn't have what we have today. And so, you know, please consider what is guiding you in your life today. For what purpose do we go through the difficulties and challenges of life to try to get to what end point, to what goal? What do we want to be able to look back on in our lives and feel we did or accomplished, or we feel good about in front of God and in front of our families and our loved ones? I feel confident that, you know, I mean, for myself, it's not always easy to know what is the right thing to do in life or the right way to go in life. But I think that if we always keep in mind where we're going, that each and every one of us is to become like embodiments of true parents, to build God-centered families, and to pass that on to this world, then that will help us to go through the difficulties and overcome the challenges, different emotions that we go through in our lives. So thank you very much.